A mother in New York faces murder charges in the death of her disabled daughter. Veronica Sorella pleading not guilty to charges that she fed candy with traces of peanuts to her disabled and allergic 8-year-old Julie. This case could hinge on a compelling piece of evidence, a suicide note. It's a complicated case, but a very sad one. Let's talk about it with Doug Burns, a former federal prosecutor. Rachel Self is a criminal defense attorney. So Julie apparently had been born with cerebral palsy. She was in a wheelchair, 8 years old. She was also allergic to peanuts. The night before she was supposed to be in her cousin's wedding as a flower girl, her mother apparently gave her some M&Ms as a treat, she said, a little thank you for being in the wedding. The M&Ms had traces of peanuts in them, and little Julie died. Now the mother is being prosecuted for murder. Doug, is that appropriate?
Well, ordinarily, absolutely not, because there would be all kinds of questions about did she know what she was feeding her, etc. But here, as you said right at the outset, there's a suicide note, which is absolutely critical. And what this is if you look at all of the facts, and remember, they presented it to the grand jury, the woman herself testified in her own defense, yet she was indicted for second-degree murder. She left a note saying that she was in fear for her husband killing her, and that she was therefore sending her daughter to heaven to avoid her potentially being mistreated by the husband. So in my opinion, all of the facts point to this being a murder-suicide, but the suicide part failed.
Rachel, Veronica, the mother, says, or apparently, gave her daughter these M&Ms that ultimately killed her. The mother later said that she saw that there was an allergic reaction. She didn't know there were peanuts in the M&Ms. She gave her some Benadryl to try to counteract the effects of, the peanut allergy. And then they both went to bed. When she woke up the next morning, the little girl was dead. She then tried to commit suicide. So where does the suicide note figure into all of this in your mind?
Well, the suicide note is going to be critical, and it's absolutely going to be admissible because it's an admission of a party in a case like this, and it also could potentially be thought of as a dying declaration. So that suicide note is very harmful to the defense of this matter, and it's definitely going to come in the trial of this case. However, that suicide note also shows how crazy this woman was, and it is an affirmative defense to depraved heart murder, which in this case is what this woman, I believe, is charged under. The New York Penal Code 125.25 has Section 4, which indicates that if you exercise a depraved indifference to human life and the victim of that is less than 11 years old, you can be charged with murder. But there is an affirmative defense to that, that if you have suffered extreme and severe emotional distress, you can be brought down to manslaughter. The charge can be brought down to manslaughter. It doesn't necessarily mean the case is going to be dismissed, but I think there's going to be a battle of the experts here because this woman's one fruit minus a full fruitcake here.
Well, but Doug,
and there's some real issues.
Doug, it's my understanding the autopsy didn't even find any traces of peanuts in the little girl's body. So doesn't that help exonerate the mother who said, I didn't know there were peanuts in there?
Yeah, but again, why would she have a note that says, I'm sending my daughter to heaven specifically? That's the more important point. But I do agree with Rachel that, first of all, she was originally charged with manslaughter. She was free from September of 2011 until very, very recently when the grand jury returned the indictment for second-degree murder, the charges having been ratcheted up. But I agree that the defense will be some type of, duress, emotional duress, and basically a straight, perhaps, insanity type concept. But to answer your question, which is a very good one, the problems in forensically what happened are overridden by the suicide note.
All right, Rachel, I mean, if someone tries to commit suicide, are they in their right mind anyway? Does the suicide attempt, and apparently what she did is take an injection of insulin, take some medication. She also told police that she tried to strangle herself with an electrical cord. So I guess you have to wonder about how serious a suicide attempt it was. But if you're trying to commit suicide, you're not necessarily in your right mind anyway, are you? Doesn't that become part of the defense?
No. Absolutely, it will. And the issue, too, with the suicide note, one thing that I found interesting when I was looking at it is that it looks like it's written by two different people. It starts off in one type of penmanship, a cursive penmanship, and then it gets down and it gets into print, and she it's just completely it's very crazy. Everything that she puts in it, how she puts her phone password to get into her voicemail, and then how she says that she wants to donate all of her things. It seems to show some coherent thought, but then on the other hand, she's saying all of these really crazy things. And I think that a clear insanity defense here is going to be one of the best defenses. And she also has the standard affirmative defense of not being under severe emotional duress.
Well, at the heart of it all is a little 8-year-old girl, Julie Sorella, in a wheelchair and a victim of cerebral palsy. It's just a very sad story all the way around. We'll keep an eye on it and let you know what the courts do. Rachel Self, Doug Burns, thank you both.
My pleasure.
Thank